Very good afternoon, or evening, should I say. It wouldn't be Mark Vogan if I didn't muck up my words right away. Good evening, and welcome to the 110th edition of the Global Weather and Climate Report. I do apologise. There we go. Good afternoon, or evening, should I say. Okay, so we're going to get there. We're going to get there, everybody. How's everybody doing on this fine Sunday evening? Have you seen any more rainfall? If you live down in the south of the UK, it certainly has been wet. We're going to be looking at that. We're going to be looking at the flooding across the eastern United States. We are going to be looking at flooding in Nepal, Mexico, and obviously it's a global weather and climate report. So we are going to look at the big, broad picture. A very, very big thank you, by the way, to Sync Splint and our friend Paul James for joining Mark Vogan Weather moderating team here. Massive thank you to both of them for joining in and going to be helping me out. It's obviously going to start getting busier as we head towards the winter season. So thank you very much to Paul and to Sing Splint for the moderation and taking the time out of your busy lives to help me out. So, yes, thank you very much. So, busy it looks like on the live chat. We will go through, as per usual, give everybody a shout out, try and answer a couple of questions, and a little bit of back and forth, which is always something that I really love about these live streams on a Sunday evening. A little bit of interaction instead of providing a video, uploading it, and then throwing it out there. It's good to be able to interact with everybody. So I believe it was Katrine that was first on the live chat this evening. So good evening to you, Katrine. We've got Soot. We have Kyle Baker joining in as well. We've got Paul James. Thank you very much, Paul. Once again, we have obviously Sync Splint. We've got Mark Kinnish. Mark says, hi Mark, back off my holiday from Portugal. Was a good break, not even a drop of rain there where I was. So yeah, lucky you, Mark. I'm sure you're making up for it now, my friend, being back in the world. We've got, who else have we got here? So, let me see who we've got. We've got Soot, we've got Trevor Hall. Good evening to you, Trevor. Hope you're enjoying your evening, my friend. We've got Jay tuning in as well. Always tuning in is Jay. It would be great if you were able to translate to English so everybody can join in on what you're saying, but unfortunately that has not happened yet. So we'll wait and see what happens. Maybe one day Jay will be able to translate to English. But a very good evening to you, Jay. Nonetheless, it is nice to see you on the live this evening. So it certainly has been a busy week of weather. Soot says big gusts of wind are happening now. Yeah, we've got a pretty deep area of low pressure actually moving into and affecting southern areas of the UK this evening. We've also had some pretty impressive rainfall, to say the least, over the past week across particularly the bulk of the UK, the southern half of the UK that is, and into the Midlands region. I do know that my mum Joyce is hopefully watching. I did leave a link for her. I think there was one point she struggled last week to get into the live stream, so hopefully she's made it successfully in to the stream this evening, and everybody else is tuning in. We've got 9 concurrent viewers at the moment. You know the script by now, everybody. Do me a favour. Oh, that's jumped up to 20 now. Do me a favour, hit that like button. Let myself and YouTube know that you're enjoying the content here on the channel. Do you know that the channel has just, I think it's past a wee while now actually, but it's top 2 million views on the channel. So I'm pretty excited about that, reaching new benchmarks here in the channel all the time. I think the subscription level is now up at 6,286. So if you love winter in particular, this is the time now to join in and subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free. There is content here on the channel every day of the working week and also the weekend as well. So you've got the European Outlook from Monday to Friday. Then the Tropical Outlook is on a Saturday. And then we've got obviously the live stream every Sunday evening here from Mark Vogan Weather HQ up in Evanton, Ross-shire, about 14 miles to the north of the Inverness area. We've got weather fans Michael tuning in. Good evening to you, Michael. I hope you're enjoying your Sunday evening, my friend. And we've got, who else have we got? Yep, Joyce has tuned in. Hi, Mark. Weather not bad down here in Kirkintilloch. Yeah, it certainly has been reasonably decent, especially across the northern half of the UK. But it's been a different story. I think there has been a bit of a break over the first half of the weekend, and then it's been kind of going downhill during the second half of the weekend. Kyle says, here in Birmingham, it rained a bit earlier, but now it's scheduled to pour down all night here. Yep, look at the radar, and we can see the heavy rainfall now moving in. Let's press the loop, actually, to see it in motion. So deep area of low pressure moving in. I think it's into the kind of 986 millibar range. And yeah, some pretty heavy rains moving all the way up towards Mark's territory up in the northwest of England. Got some fairly heavy bands of rain propagating away from that area of low pressure that's approaching to the southwest. And the latest visible satellite imagery shows the sun now setting over the UK. It's pretty much dark here, but nice curl associated with that area of low pressure moving into the Celtic Sea and towards the southwestern portions of the British Isles at the moment here. Ryan G also tuning in. Hello to you, Ryan. Ryan says, hello, Mark. First live I've caught. Well, a very warm welcome to you, Ryan, and I hope you enjoy the content here in the channel. It kind of bounces around between 4 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. Lindsay's working, my wife Lindsay, she's working this evening. So when she is off, I tend to do a 4 p.m. live stream. And then when she's working late, I tend to do a late live stream. So it's usually between 4 and 7:30 p.m. We've got Richard Shaw also tuning in, and John Simpson. Hello to you, John, raining in Nottingham. Richard says, does he say anything? Let me just see here. He says, well done in the 2 millions. That, like Ibrox, filled 39.35 times. Very good, my friend. Yeah, it's taken a wee while, I must admit, to get there, but nonetheless, I have managed to achieve that figure, and hopefully that figure will continue to rise as we move towards the upcoming winter season. The views on each video as well are starting to climb as well, so a massive thank you to everybody for your terrific support. I really do greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. Obviously, you know that I do work a full-time job. I do night shift driving up and down the A9 between Inverness and Glasgow and back. I sleep during the daytime, but when I do get up, obviously I do my normal stuff and then provide a video for everybody. It's usually published around 5:30 p.m. each evening. So I certainly like to keep busy between driving and weather forecasting. And it certainly is going to get quite interesting as we go through the next month or so here. We will be doing, to release the winter forecast this year, there will be a live stream, and it is likely to be the final Saturday of November. So obviously I think that's the 31st of November, if there is 31 days in November, which I think there is. I hope I'm right in saying that. But it's going to be the Saturday, and then obviously the next day will be the 1st of December. I tend to like to release the forecast slightly before the actual season begins. So it will be probably sometime late Saturday afternoon or early Saturday evening. The final Saturday of November will be the release of the 2024-25 winter forecast. So let me see here. We have 26 concurrent viewers at the moment here. So as always, I greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of today's stream. Looking back quickly at the month of September last year, I actually forgot that it was a joint record for the warmest. So following a very interesting summer, September will go down as a quite remarkable month. We have seen it all with a full-blown heat wave. Remember, we did see some fairly hot conditions at the start of this September, but it's been a very, very back and forth type of September for this year. And last year we had a very strong positive North Atlantic oscillation, as you can see here. I know it's probably a little bit difficult to see, especially if you're watching on a mobile, but you can see here the North Atlantic oscillation last September started off with a strong positive heat wave conditions. Hottest conditions of the entire year was achieved last September. Interesting enough, this year the hottest conditions for me was in May this year, and then was seen the second warmest day of the year in September. So Last year, the warmest conditions was September. This year, May and September have been the warmest. So that leaves June, July, and August yet again not achieving the warmest temperatures of the year, which is rather interesting. It's a short-lived period of record that I have here at the house. It's only been it'll be 2 years in January that I've had my weather station here. So obviously a very, very short-lived period of record, but nonetheless it's been an interesting last couple of years in terms of weather pattern. Very blocky type of situation developed. We've obviously had a very strong ridge over the northern half of Europe, troughiness underneath. We've seen the record rain across southeastern and eastern portions of Europe, and we've also seen that trapped area of low pressure to the south of the UK. Hence why we've had the wettest conditions during the month of September across the bulk of England and Wales, less in the way of rain across more northern areas. But this negative Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation, this September is turning out to be quite interesting actually. And the month of October is going to be interesting as well with regards to what we actually see in terms of wintry weather pattern. Now, obviously, we're not getting the benefit as we would do like a month, 2 months down the road. This type of weather pattern would be delivering quite the snow and also quite the cold, but it's still too early. But what's the weather pattern telling us? That's the question I'm asking. Is this negative Arctic oscillation, negative North Atlantic oscillation, record weak polar vortex, and we'll look at that in a little bit of detail shortly, is all very, very interesting when you factor in the longer term pattern. Is this a harbinger of things to come with regards to a wintry pattern and an early taste of winter? Does the polar vortex eventually strengthen, and it strengthens the westerlies, and then we drive mild Atlantic air into the pattern further down the road? This is going to be the big question. This is the questions that I'm asking going forward here. So Suit says 2024 overall has been the most interesting year for weather. It certainly has, Suit. I must admit. Let me just see if there's anybody else. Definitely been a different type of September this year, says Mark. It certainly has been, and I actually think that this September is going to turn out slightly below average for the UK. I know the CET, or the Central England temperature, will probably be warmer than average, but when you factor in the UK as a whole, it's turning out to be quite a different type of September than what we've seen in recent years. But going back to last September, this is the October outlook that I produced last year. But September 2023 tied with 2006 for the UK's warmest on record. And this is going to turn out to be a very, very different story altogether. In terms of rainfall, you can see here last September was quite spread out with areas of dry, but it was a reasonably wet September last year. And we're seeing this trend in recent years, probably due to the warmer than average sea surface temperatures. But our friend Shrine Bruin in Dublin, in Ireland, put this tweet out back on the 25th of September. Will be interesting to see how much more the England and Wales precipitation rises. It's already 119% of the September average, and obviously recent days has even seen more. But recent wet Septembers, 90 millimetres I think being the average. 2024 so far by 90.6. 2023 with 91.1 millimetres. This is obviously based on the average for England, Wales combined. Then 2022 was 90.4 millimetres. 2019, 124. Very wet September in 2019. 2017 was 106.2. And 2012, 92.8. And 2008 was 103.6. So very, very wet Septembers in recent times. Let's have a quick flick through some more of Shrine's interesting tweets. Let's not forget last October was the wettest since 2000. What kind of October is it going to be? I think we're going to continue with this south displaced jet. We've got a very powerful area of high pressure over Greenland. We've got the Mann-Julian oscillation, which I very often refer to because I think that's a very, very important driver when it comes to a type of weather pattern across the Northern Hemisphere. And we've had that MJO or Mann-Julian oscillation stuck in phases 7 and 8. And that's been enhancing, I think, partly enhancing the blocky pattern that we've had. We've had a lot of troughs dropping out of the Bering Sea down into the western side of the United States, and then we've seen that downstream influence just building that pressure over northern North America, extending into Greenland. Therefore, we've had these shots of cold. This is the second Arctic air mass of September to drop south into the western side of the European continent, and then we've had a strengthening of jet stream winds forced to the south but into the UK, hence why we've had this turn to colder during the month of September in particular. But he says the dry run of Octobers in 2015 to 2018 is a very distant memory. 2016 was the driest since 1978, and he's obviously referring to Octobers. So I think we're going to maintain this wet south, drier north in terms of the month of October for the UK and Ireland. And the question mark is, does this pattern continue as we go into the winter season here? Obviously, we know that we had spells of favourable MJO blockiness during the month of October. We've seen some fairly cold days and nights in October last year. Then it kind of pulled back, and then we've seen the MJO rotate through the warm phases. We've seen mild conditions at times during the month of November, and then it rotated back into phases 7, 8, and 1 as we moved into early December. And remember, December was a colder than average month last year for the UK and Ireland here. And the tropics is going to be important as we go down the road as well, because we've got a livelier Atlantic pattern. This is off the the National Hurricane Center in Miami. We've obviously seen Helene. We're going to look at the devastation that Helene caused shortly, but you can see here that at the moment we've got this activity going on within the Atlantic Basin. So we've obviously got Isaac way up, quite far north, 75 mile per hour hurricane with the pressure at 971 millibars, moving in a northeasterly direction at 12 miles per hour. So let's click on Isaac, because this could be quite interesting for even our interests here in Western Europe. Looks as if it goes to storm strength, so it's going to weaken. It's barely clinging on to hurricane status at the moment. So anytime now, it's going to become a storm. Wow, we've got North Midlands Weather donated £5. A massive thank you. That is very, very kind, by the way, for your donation, North Midlands Weather. That is fantastic stuff. Thank you very much for the kind donation. And it's also good to see you on the chat as well. Yeah, I don't know if I've actually seen North Midlands Weather before. So it is lovely to see you on, and like I say, a massive thank you for the kind donation, £5 donation by North Midlands Weather. So let me see here. Mark Kinnish says, Mark, when we got the cold December of 2010, did the MJO get stuck in the cold part to keep us cold? That's actually a very good question, Mark, because we did have, I believe, anyway, from my understanding, we did have a westerly QBO during the 2010 winter. I get mixed up, honestly, I get mixed up between different years. 09-10, obviously, we all remember that. And I think we did have, I don't even know, did we have a sun stratospheric warming? I think we did, but we had a west QBO, and the quasi-biennial oscillation blows either westerly or easterly. Easterly QBOs tend to favour colder conditions, more blockiness, but we also can get very cold winters even with a westerly QBO as opposed to an easterly QBO. We've got the Bloxburg Geek also tuning in. They say, hey Mark, what can people expect in the southeast of Europe? That is a very interesting question, Bloxburg Geek. We'll look at the longer term models in a little while as well. So let me just see, have I missed out anybody else before we crack on with more content? Mark says, wonder if it'll be at December 2010. Certainly would have to be. It would take an awful lot to get to 2010 December to remember for sure, but you never know what might happen. So, yes, let's crack on anyway. So this is the forecast track, the official forecast track from NHC, showing that Isaac eventually becomes post-tropical. It loses tropical characteristics and it becomes a cold core area of low pressure. By the time we reach the end of this week, it goes up between the UK and Iceland here as an ordinary baroclinic area of low pressure. Looking elsewhere, we've got Tropical Storm Joyce. We click on this, see where Joyce is going to go. It is literally going to go nowhere. It drifts to the north and then dissipates according to NHC over the next several days. This area of interest here, disturbance 2. We need to keep a close eye on this here, by the way, because some of the modelling is suggesting a little bit of a Helene type situation. We certainly hope and pray that that is not the case, but NHC gives us a 0% chance of development over the next 48 hours. But we do have another area, got a few in fact, one coming off the African coast, but we've also got one to the west of Cabo Verde, and it has an 80% chance of development, disturbance 1 over the next 48 hours. Like I said, the tropics are going to play a very significant role, by the way, in terms of our weather pattern into the month of October, and not just our weather pattern, but across the northern hemisphere as well. But notice here we've got a 50% chance. This is over the next 7 days. 50% chance for this system in the Western Caribbean, drifting northwestwards towards the Yucatan and into the Gulf of Mexico as well. So we're going to need to watch this situation. The MJO is actually becoming less favourable as we progress towards the second half of October. But there's always that lag as well that we need to remember. We've got obviously a 90% chance of that disturbance 1 developing over the next 7 days. We've got a 30% chance for disturbance 3, which has recently come off Africa for development over the next 7-day period. So let's look at some of the images that have been coming out of the United States. This is a tweet here by Jordan Hall, and this was the scene from, where is it from? It's down in northwestern Florida. This, unfortunately, folks, is what storm surge does when a hurricane of Helene's strength and stature comes in. When you have a wall of 8 feet or above water, there is nothing that can withstand that type of force. And this was the devastating scene just to the east of the landfall point back the other day. And a very, very tragic situation here for not just northwestern Florida, by the way, but it extends all the way up to West North Carolina and eastern Tennessee. But yeah, where the heck do you start with that kind of devastation? This is Horseshoe Beach in Florida, and that is a tweet, like I said, from Jordan Hall. So yeah, very, very, very sad scenes indeed coming out of Horseshoe Beach in the northwest of Florida. Cedar Key as well has been essentially wiped off the map for now as well. Looking at other things here, let me see. Because there's other incredible flooding as well. Look at this here. This is Jeff Banson. The difference here between Chimney Rock, North Carolina. Look at this here. It's essentially, look, businesses here on the left-hand side, restaurants, maybe a few stores. The top image and the bottom image, very, 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 very sad situation indeed, I must say, coming out of the eastern and southeastern half of the United States. So let me just continue to scroll down. This is our friend Thierry Goose, based in Vancouver, Canada's Twitter handle. Always refer to his tweets looking at the global picture and some extremes that have taken place around the world. So 117 degrees in Phoenix, Arizona. That's a new monthly record that was set on the 28th of the month. By far the highest temperature recorded so late in the year at this station. One of the highest temperatures ever recorded so late in the year for the United States. There was 117 recorded in the month of October. But also we've also got on the opposite side of the continent, minus 22.5 at alert in Nunavut territory. That's the lowest temperature of the season in Canada, and the first minus 20 recorded of the season. So the cold is beginning to build across the northern portions of the hemisphere, and that cold is going to continue. Interesting here, new Danish September record for most rainfall within a single 24-hour period. That goes to 144.6 millimeters at Esbjerg. Probably not the right pronunciation, but I do try sometimes. It's by far the largest amount of rain measured in September in Denmark. Records go back to 1874 and the 5th largest ever in Danish weather history. So quite an interesting rainfall record going. We've obviously seen some outstanding records. Woburn in Bedfordshire. We've seen Oxford recording its wettest 24-hour period. Records in Oxford go back over 100 years as well. And some of the rainfall in recent days and weeks across the planet has been pretty incredible. All that warm water is adding fuel to the atmosphere, and therefore we're seeing exceptional rainfall events as a result of that. 141.2 Celsius was achieved in Peru yesterday, only 0.2 Celsius below the September national record set back last year just. And 0.4 below the all-time national record in Peru. And obviously, La Nina has a lot to do with that as well. The cooling waters of the East Central Pacific provides a lot of higher pressure over the Eastern Pacific, and therefore places close to there, i.e. Peru and Western South America, are going to see heat as a result of the La Nina. We also seen back on the 27th of September as well, these swings back and forth between warm and cold. Heat moved eastwards across Canada, with Manitoba being the hottest spot. This is, like I say, the 27th of September. We've seen temperatures into the low 30s in areas of central Canada here. Going back to the 26th of September, first minus 10 Celsius in the 3 ice boxes of Siberia. Again, we're going to start to see that expanse of reflectivity going to become more apparent as we move through the month of October. As you lay down that carpet of white, in other words, snow, you're going to see the cold building further and further. Minus 12.6 at Oymekon, Del Yanker, minus 12, and Verkhoyansk, minus 11 Celsius. So these are the coldest temperatures of the season so far. Was achieved in Russia. Speaking of snow, this is the expectation seen by the modelling over the next couple of weeks here. This is the current snow cover as of Sunday the 29th. This is obviously based on the GFS model, but as we play through this loop, you can see where the snow is growing across Eastern Asia and Northeastern Asia. And you notice here how it expands westwards. Even parts of Scandinavia looks as if it's going to get in on some snow between now and the middle portions of October here. But as you build the snow, you're going to increase the depth of cold, and it's only going to get colder and colder across the Northern Hemisphere as we go through the next several weeks. So let's go back to his tweets, and then we'll move on with more information and more things. There's certainly plenty of things going on at the moment, that's for sure, with regards to extreme weather. So let me see, is there anything else showing up? We did see some cold conditions across northern portions of Norway. Temperatures down close to minus 10. This was back on the 23rd of September. But we've had quite a lot of warmth up across northern Scandinavia in recent days as well. But yeah, anyway, let's crack on. Let's have a look and see Volcanic. Their Twitter feed is actually always quite interesting as well. And it wasn't just due to Helene and the effects that had on parts of the Yucatan of Mexico and obviously the southeastern United States. But we also had Hurricane John make landfall on the west coast of Mexico. That also produced some major flooding in the Acapulco area. Very small, so you can't really see it, unfortunately. But we've seen more devastation, actually, due to a tropical cyclone making landfall on the western side of Mexico. And obviously this place was hit very, very badly by Otis, Hurricane Otis, back was it last year, I think it was, that Acapulco was bulldozed by that hurricane. But look at this here. This is scenes out of Kathmandu in Nepal. Look at this building here. So that is the scenes coming out of Nepal over the course of the weekend. This is also scenes coming out of Panama City, Panama in Central America. So we're seeing devastating floods in many areas. We've got the Music Dude has also donated very kindly £5. A massive thank you to Music Dude for the donation as well. What an epic live stream this has turned out to be. So thank you very much, and that is very, very kind of you for doing so. So people are very, very generous, and listen, it's very, very much appreciated, your kind donations and support overall to the channel. It is through yourselves that this is driving me to provide more content here in the channel. So yeah, thank you very much, Music Dude, for the donation. So let's continue to move on. So According to Volcanic, at least 129 people have died due to the flooding in parts of Nepal. So this is a very devastating scene as well, and quite often underlooked by other stories such as Helene. But it really is very, very sad times in many parts of the world. This was the scene in South Carolina due to the moisture getting driven out of the Gulf of Mexico, and especially as that moisture ran up into the southern portions of the Appalachian Mountains, we've seen the incredible rainfall. Over 30 inches of rain fell in parts of the southern Appalachians in the space of just a few days, creating some very, very crazy scenes. This is a tornado here, by the way, in the Moscow region of Russia. So, bouncing back and forth, but it's a global weather report. It is a chance for you to see, and you don't really see it much elsewhere. A channel is trying to show you the global picture, what's going on around the world at the moment here. This is the scene here of a farmland in East Tennessee, essentially underwater due to the rainfall. So this is a massive story going on in the eastern United States at the moment. This is going to be months of rebuilding. Look at that there. Look at all the crop loss that will have produced. And this is unfortunately scenes that we're seeing in many, many parts of the southeastern United States. This is the scene captured in Mexico as well. And I'm assuming that is the effects of John. I could be wrong with that, but that might be due to the landfall of Hurricane John that came off the Pacific. This was in Tunisia, by the way. This is interesting. Kasserine in Tunisia. This was yesterday, so it must have been Saturday afternoon. And I want to obviously reiterate to Volcanic's tweets as well. Thank you very much to Volcanic for sharing these incredible, obviously heartbreaking scenes from around the world of the flooding. This was Marshall in North Carolina. Again, obviously due to Helene moving north and then dissipating, it kind of hooked up with an upper level low pressure system over the southern half of the United States. So you get the overall idea. A lot of flooding going on around the world at the moment. There's obviously areas that are seeing severe drought, but there's a lot of places that are seeing record-breaking amounts of rainfall in recent times. So let me see here. Let's look at the CDAS data for the month of October in terms of the temperature anomalies. That is a tradition here. By the way, this is the current snowfall around the planet at the moment. I did have it a second ago here. I've got too many tabs open, a little bit irritating. Let me just see here. I keep capturing other things to talk about as well, and it ends up distracting me. I caught it a second ago. There we go. Here we are here. So this is the Northern Hemisphere snow and ice cover at the moment. And you can obviously see very little. There's a little bit up across the far northwest of Canada, parts of Alaska, especially over the Brooks Range and the mountainous areas, and Siberia, parts of western China, northern portions of Mongolia, and the usual kind of suspect spots across northeastern Russia at the moment. But like I said, this is what we're expecting towards Tuesday the 15th of October. Quite a decent area of snow cover actually developing, even across Scandinavia as well. Across North America, northern areas, western areas of Canada, as well as parts of Ontario and northern Quebec are going to start to see snow developing here as we get the the colder air building over the northern portions of the northern hemisphere as a whole. We've got definitely not that random guy also tuning in. That's a fantastic name. But he says, Vogan, what is your opinion on the 2024-25 winter? Will it be cold or mild? Okay, I'm going to say what I'm going to think at the moment here. I think we're going to have a front-loaded traditional La Nina type situation. Cold front half of winter, milder second half. That at the moment is where I'm thinking. My concerns are that the polar vortex is going to strengthen as the winter goes on, but we also may see a sudden stratospheric warming. That changes things altogether. This is the zonal mean wind at 10 millibars, way up at the very top of the stratosphere. The stronger the winds, the stronger the polar vortex, the greater chance we've got a stronger, more zonal influence. So mild Pacific air flooding North America, mild Atlantic air flooding Europe. When you've got that strong polar vortex, you've got stronger jet stream winds, and it tends to be flatter, and therefore you've got that flat jet roaring across the Atlantic. You know what the script is: wind, rain, and milder conditions as a result of that. Now, if we look at the ECMWF mean zonal winds, we're actually at record-breaking levels at the moment here. So very slack mean zonal winds at 10 millibars. Therefore, we've got the opportunity for a lot of heat to get transferred up into the high latitudes, and that's what we're seeing at the moment here. A lot of blocking across the Arctic, across the North Atlantic, and Greenland at the moment here. And generally, the jet stream is fairly weak, but we do have a fairly strong jet core at the moment roaring across the Atlantic and impacting France and the southern UK. But you can see here, I know it's hard to see, but the ECMWF is projecting that we go and remain quite weak in the mean zonal winds all the way up towards the middle and second half of October, but then eventually the mean zonal wind is supposed to go stronger than average as we move towards the early portions of November. So I'm going to look at October in just a second here, but that there is something that I'm paying close attention to, is that stronger than average expected towards week 3 and 4 of October. That would suggest to me, if the MJO goes out of the cold phases, which it's doing, into the warmer phases in combination. Remember, there's a lag of about 2 weeks, by the way. That's why I think even though the mean zonal winds were expected to actually become stronger quicker, the ECMWF is kind of keeping a delay in that strengthening of the polar vortex. But even though the fact that the MJO is rotating into slightly milder phases, there's that lag effect, and I think October is going to be a below average month. So September is going to be colder than average, I think, anyway. October, I think, is going to be below average, which is really interesting, by the way, because when's the last time we've had a colder than average September and October? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section below the last time we've had that. Looks as if Lindsay's tuned in. I hope you're not having a skive. But yeah, Lindsay's tuned in. Thanks very much, Lindsay, for tuning in. Hope work is going well for you. So yeah, we've got Hazel Kitching as well. Hi, Mark and everyone. Sorry I am late. No problem, Hazel. Better late than never. And listen, thanks very much for tuning in, Hazel. So let's crack on anyway. The polar vortex. I did say that I was going to look at temperature anomalies in a second. I will get there, but there's so many things swimming around in my head, and I want to try and cover everything. This, by the way, is the GFS 10 millibar temperature anomaly. So this is the stratosphere at the top, and the weak polar vortex just continues. So the blues represent colder than average, and the reds represent warmer than average temperatures at 10 millibars. Let's play through this animation here. And you can see the reds continuing to release out of the northern portions of Asia towards the North Pole. And it's essentially continuing to kind of displace that vortex. So this is quite unusual to see. Normally you would see during the month of late August through September into October, that kind of small donut of cold right over the top of the pole, right in the center of this graphic here. You would normally see the blues forming. Then it would expand as we progress through September and October. Obviously, you've got a lack of daylight, and an increasingly lack of daylight over the northern hemisphere. And that is the reason why we're seeing this cold pool every year build in strength. And the stronger that polar vortex, the stronger the winds around that vortex become. And then that has an effect on the troposphere below. So you've got the stratosphere at the top, you've got the troposphere, which is where our weather resides. That's where our weather happens. And the polar vortex, we've got essentially two polar vortexes, the stratospheric one and the tropospheric one. And usually when you've got a strong polar vortex over the stratosphere, that tends to reflect the tropospheric polar vortex, strengthens the jet stream winds, and you tend to have milder or stormier conditions across the middle latitudes. But this weakness continues to show all the way through towards the middle portion of the month. Look at these kind of brighter, kind of yellowy, not yellow, but kind of orangey colours continuing to show as we progress through towards mid-month here. This is really interesting stuff, by the way, because this is going to have an effect on the Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation. We're strongly negative at the moment, which means we've got a lot of blocking over the top. Weak jet stream, lobes of cold going south, lobes of warmth going north. We're seeing that, and it looks as if based on this here, we're going to continue to see that into the month of October here. So this weak polar vortex is definitely making me lead to think that this is going to be a cold October compared to average anyway. I'm not saying it's going to be, the coldest ever or anything like that, but it's very interesting how the modelling continues with this strat warming, and what does this mean later down the road. So let's look at the 850 not the 850s, the 10 millibar temperature. This is the actuals. So I showed you the anomaly just there. This is the actuals. And look at this here. So we're building the strength of the polar vortex here. The darker the blues becomes purplies. That is the polar vortex. But notice it's displaced. It's not sitting over the top. It's pushed southwards over North America, Greenland, and the North Atlantic. This, to me, by the way, would suggest that we're forcing the jet stream position further south during the month of October. Play through the loop here, you can continue to see the polar vortex becoming stronger and stronger. But look at the warming showing up over Eastern Asia towards the pole. That is displacing the polar vortex off its centre and into the North Atlantic here. But that, to me, if you were to ask me what does that correlate to, that would suggest to me that the jet stream position is going to be further south than normal during the month of October. And it's going to be, again, colder across the North UK, but I think it's going to be wetter across the southern UK. Based purely on this, we have to factor in the Madden-Julian oscillation, and we also have to remember the tropics. The tropics are going to be a big player as well. Look at the GFS ensemble, by the way. This is the 2 meter temperature anomalies over Europe. Play through this loop and you notice something, that it stays on the cold side for the majority of the time, all the way out to the middle of the month. We get, areas of low pressure moving up towards the northwest. We're going to get milder air get lifted north ahead of these areas of low pressure. But notice here that the general theme, the general emphasis is on colder than average, extending all the way in the week 1 and 2 of October here. Look at this here. It's staying colder than average all the way through to the 15th of the month. So if we look at the 5-day increments here, so this is the kind of average over a 5-day period. Check this out in terms of the temperature anomaly. So let's go to the upcoming 5 days. This is the period now up until the 4th of October, below average. And most of Europe actually is below average. Warmer than average across far eastern Europe, warmer than average across Spain and Portugal. Day 6 through 10, this is out to the 9th of October. Look at that there. It's staying below average in terms of temperature anomaly. And then the 11th to 15th day, which is all the way out to the 14th, yeah, you get the drift. Below average. And like I said already, I think this is going to be a slightly below average September. It'll either be average or slightly below average for the month of September. In terms of rainfall, this is how it's looking for the upcoming 7-day period. So wet across the south, dry across the north. I'm sure folks down in the south love that. 8 to 14 day, you can see that it is largely drier than average the further north you go here. Wetter than average across parts of Europe. Average to above average for the majority of mainland Europe, if you notice. The driest anomalies is actually Turkey and northwestern UK, and Ireland is drier than average also. And then skipping all the way out to the middle of the month, drier north, slightly wetter south, or close to average anyway. So let's go back to what I was originally going to show you. What time are we at anyway? 22 minutes past 8. Time is ticking on. So let's try and crack on. See that's data. Let's see here. Month to date. So it's pretty much the month of September, really. And you can see here, warmer than average across the majority of North America. South America, warmer than average. Most of Europe, warmer than average. Africa, we've got parts of the Sahel region, equatorial region, slightly below average, probably because of wetter than average conditions. Warm south, warm north of Africa. Australia is also running warmer than average. The maritime continent, Indonesia, up into Southeast Asia, warmer than average. India, slightly below average. We've had again, a wetter than average monsoon season this year as well. Kazakhstan, for pretty cold compared to average here. Mongolia to the east is actually slightly warmer than average. Russia, we've got a very warm west. Then it kind of moderates as you go into central and eastern Asia, parts of Russia. Still warmer than average, if you notice here, but the exception being across southern areas of Russia. And I suppose you could say Siberia is running below average. Let's look at Europe here. And this is how the month is looking up until today, Sunday the 29th of September. Look at that there, below average. Again, how many people would have said it's going to be a below average September? How many people were going to say it was a below average June, July and August? Let's not forget the Europe as a whole has been pretty darn warm over recent months. But when you look at the UK and Ireland, this is really quite interesting. Let's look at the past 121 days, 120 days actually, talking nonsense. Is it going to show me this? Because I tweeted this the other day. But for the last 120 days, the UK has been average to slightly below average. So that's quite something actually when you think about it. So let me look here. By the way, did you get the chance to look up that video that I produced back, I think it was either Friday or Thursday of last week? It was a 45-minute long video. It was in depth, but I specifically wanted to talk about the teleconnections and the bigger picture, explaining a little bit more about what the actual Madden-Julian oscillation is, because I talk about this a lot. And the reason why is I think it's a very important factor when it comes to long-term weather patterns, and it can be a great indicator as to where a weather pattern may go. Doesn't guarantee anything, but when it has an amplified certain phase, in other words, if it goes into phases 4 and 5, you can pretty much say that it's going to be a warmer than average weather pattern for not just Western Europe but also eastern portions of North America. When it rotates into phases 7, 8, 1, that tends to lead to colder weather. And this was a great tool back last autumn into the winter season. The combination of the active Atlantic laid on last year and the MJO amplified in phases 7, 8, and 1, which is west to central Pacific, that led or helped lead to the very deep negative Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation, and a colder than average December. That also then moved into the winter season last year, into January. The first half of January, a lot of people forget the first half of winter last year was actually colder than average. Then I think the El Nino really took over, and then it shut down other teleconnection influences such as the MJO, and it just drove a very mild pattern which strengthened the jet stream across most of the northern hemisphere when that El Nino became responsive between ocean and atmosphere. It took over. So where are we going this year? Stay tuned, because we're going to be looking at winter coming up this week on the channel as well here. I'm going to be looking, I might try and get my second winter update done this upcoming week, and then I'll release that. Maybe we'll talk about that next Sunday, for example. But the MJO is in phase 1 at the moment, and then it kind of fiddles back into the null phase. When it goes into this inner circle, it's known as the null phase, which means the influence of that eastward propagating wave of enhanced convection. It releases thunderstorms, release heat, and then it transfers up into the northern hemisphere. It affects the jet, it strengthens it, it weakens it, it changes shape of the ridges and troughs. And that's how the MJO, even though it's away in the Indian Ocean or in the Pacific, it's influencing the weather around the world. And that is why I think the MJO is something that we need to look at and pay close attention to, because it has global reaching effects. But the NAO and the AO is expected to stay negative. Look at the Arctic Oscillation here. So it was record strong during the month of August. I've given my reasons why I think this has changed, by the way, from strong positive to strong negative. SOI, Southern Oscillation Index, etc., etc. So there's obviously a lot of background to all this, but the Arctic Oscillation was firmly positive during the month of August. We've seen the heat, remember, in the southern UK, 34.8 Celsius, the hottest day of the year for the UK, was achieved when that Arctic Oscillation was very strongly positive. And that means, obviously, the cold is, I know the month of August, you don't have a lot of cold in the northern hemisphere, but it's kind of trapped over the top of the pole. And then we'll see stronger ridging over this, the middle latitude pattern. But look at how it went from strong positive to the deepest negative we've seen in years. In fact, the North Atlantic Oscillation actually was the strongest negative, I believe, on record for the month of September. So it was actually the strongest positive in August on record, and now it's went strongest negative on record for the month of September. So these big flips are creating extreme weather around the world. But you can see here it's went back to neutral, but it's expected to trend back negative once again. So in combination with what's going on within the stratosphere and the polar vortex, the MJO, I think that's all connected, by the way. So let's look at the weekly increments here of the CFSV2. So we looked at the GFS ensemble for the month of August. Let's look at the CFSV2. So this is week 1. You can see here it's actually slightly wetter than the GFS. It's wetter across more northern and eastern areas of the British Isles here. Look at this belt of wet conditions. Central and northern France, southern UK as well. In the week 2 of the CFSV2 still looks wet. But notice here the CFSV2 is wetter further north. Then in the week 3 it turns really quite wet. And week 4 it then loses the signal here towards the end of October. Looking at the temperature anomaly, CFSV2 always tends to lean warm quickly. Notice here week 1 below average, UK, Ireland and into Central Europe here. Week 2 stays below average. So there you go, up until the 13th of October. So that's close to the middle portion of the month, colder than average. Then the CFSV2 sees a warmer second half to the month of October. But the NAO and the AO is quite interesting actually through the month of October. I think the lag of the weak vortex and also the MJO is going to carry us through at least the first half of October in terms of a colder pattern. Lobes of Arctic air coming south, where it's going to be met by incoming areas of low pressure on that south displaced jet stream. And we're going to continue to see this wet pattern across France into the southern UK, drier across the north here. So I hope that's explaining it. I hope I'm not repeating myself too much with all this here. I want to show you here the northern hemisphere view, and this is where that Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation comes into play. So let's look at the 500 millibar pattern. And this generally shows you what's going to take place. So if we look at the 500 heights, this is the upcoming 7 days. So there's that big blocker across the north. That's sending the flow on the east side of that into the northwestern UK, Ireland, and northwestern Europe. I'm meaning really to say. But notice here the block here indicating that we could see flow coming almost over the top of the pole from Eastern Asia across the top and into Western Europe here with this upper level orientated flow. Into week 2, you notice here that the block stays in place. So that negative NAO AO signal is maintaining itself. Look at that trough over Western Europe and the Western and the UK as well. We're also starting to see a bit of a reflection in this pattern, digging trough over the North Pacific, ridge in the west, and trough in the east of North America here. That's also quite interesting to see here. Wouldn't this be a fantastic weather pattern if this was the winter time? It just kind of sucks that it's still early on. I hope this isn't a situation, by the way, where we're getting this negative Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation during the autumn season when you don't have a lot of cold air, and then it flips, positive as we go forward. I really hope that that isn't the case, by the way. But look at this here, week 2. So the period 13th through the 20th of October, it's showing a trough over the UK, Ireland, bang slap over. But look at the blockiness extending from central North America, Greenland, up into the Arctic region here. So there's a part of me that's thinking, why is the CFSV2 showing the warm anomaly with this type of 500 millibar pattern? CFSV2 sometimes doesn't really make sense to me, to be honest with you. So I'm leaning towards a colder than average October, probably wet south, dry north type of situation. That is really what I'm leaning to, but there's also a part of me that thinks with the MJO rotating towards 4 and 5, do we lose the cold signal towards the back half of October? That's something that may be the case, by the way. So anyway, have I forgotten anything? Probably. We've spoken about the record rain. Even in England and Wales, we've seen a very wet past week or so here. It's going to be more rain, unfortunately. You don't need me to tell you that if you live in the south at the moment. We're seeing more heavy rainfall moving in. And this is what we're expecting off the ECMWF for the next few days. So this is out to Thursday, 3rd of October. And across the north, not much in the way of rain. A little bit in the east. Western Scotland, look at that there, barely a millimetre of rainfall between now and next Thursday, or the upcoming Thursday. Look at the north of England here. So Mark Kinnish's territory, the Wirral near Liverpool, we're talking about upwards of nearly 50 millimetres rainfall between now and Thursday. Across Liverpool, Manchester, into the Leeds, Bradford area. That is a pretty wet swathe looking at the next few days here. South Wales, we're talking about maybe 20, 30 millimetres of rain, possibly more. Southwestern England, around the London area, we're talking about maybe 19, 20 millimetres on top of what we've already seen. And there's a lot of saturated ground, especially across central and southern UK. And it was Joe Bastardi that said, Joe Bastardi based at Weatherbell, said that where the heaviest rains fall during the autumn, especially the middle and late autumn, can sometimes lead to where the trough is going to go in the early portions of winter. So is this also a telltale sign that we're going to get cold down the road and in the areas that are seeing the wettest conditions, France, southern UK? Who knows? It's anybody's guess at the moment. Continue to see 40 concurrent viewers at the moment here. Before you leave the live stream today, please hit that like button. It would be much appreciated. It helps the algorithm of the channel spread through YouTube, the reach of the videos, the reach of the channel overall. If you hit that like button, it would be much appreciated. And also hit that subscribe button. The views and the subscriptions continue to rise. And a massive thank you to everybody for that. Let's real quick look at the overview pattern for the next wee while here. We've got a few areas of low pressure to watch. By the way, these are the current 850 temperatures. Notice here that we've got this area of cool across the UK and Ireland. There's that deep area of low pressure. It's kind of trying to pull a little bit of milder conditions up into the UK here. That area of low pressure moves east. We still see some residual cold behind that. There's that area of low pressure, possibly in association with Isaac, moving up towards the area between Iceland and the UK here. But notice here there's a little bit of a hangback of cold air over the UK and Ireland here. So we're not going to see massively mild conditions, but there are milder conditions trying to move in. But the ECMWF has more cold air coming into the pattern towards the end of the period here. So overview chart here looks like this. So we've got that area of low pressure actually weakening as it crosses the southern UK. Notice here the pressure goes from the mid 980s up close to the mid 990s between now and early Tuesday. Then that area of low pressure becomes kind of stuck. Could be some significant amounts of rain southern UK into the near continent. Windy conditions, 50-60 mile per hour winds in exposed areas of southwestern Britain over the next few days associated with this area of low pressure. Notice here the high to the north, keeping things relatively dry and settled across more northern areas. And then this, as we go towards the middle and second half of the week, there's that area of high pressure kind of settling in place over the British Isles here. And with fairly chilly air in the mid and upper levels, by the way, we're going to see some mist and fog and fairly cold conditions at night time, especially with clear skies associated with that area of high pressure. But that would be certainly welcome news during the middle and second half of the week, especially for areas that have seen so much rain. And then we've got areas of low pressure trying to move in from the west. But look at that high building over the Greenland, over the North Atlantic here. It's forcing these lows to get pushed to the south here. Again, imagine if we had this in December or January. That would be heavy snow and that would be very cold conditions getting driven in from the north here. But that is a very interesting pattern. Look at that 953 millibar low. That's a tropical system as well. And as these tropical systems move north, they're obviously pulling warmth towards the Arctic. That might help reinforce the negative Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation. Looks as if we are seeing Sync Splint leave because, wow, is that 20 to 9 in the evening? I didn't realise that was the time, folks. I do apologise. Still got 44 people, so they must be enjoying listening to me waffling on. Probably a load of rubbish, but the Sync Splint, thank you very much for your moderating this evening. It is very much appreciated. And thank you to Paul James once again for moderating the stream as well. So, listen, I think we're going to call it quits at that. I did not realise this is the longest I've ever done a live stream, talking for an hour and 10 minutes. So, yeah, going to call it quits at that. Thanks very much for watching. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Enjoy the rest of what's left of your weekend and your Sunday evening. And listen, I'll be back right here at the same place, same time, 5:30 p.m. for the European Outlook. We'll look more at the month of October. And later on this week, I'll probably do a second winter update, so stay tuned for that. I believe Gavin Partridge did release his 5th winter update, if I'm right in saying, earlier on today. So do check out Gavin's latest winter update on his channel. Good evening to everybody. Thanks for watching, and I will see you back here tomorrow with a video upload. It will be a European Outlook, of course, and the live stream will be, all being well, back this 4 p.m. probably next week. So stay tuned for that. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you tomorrow with more. Bye for now.